My name is Silva Depanian. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'll be talking to you today about social anxiety disorder. Feelings of shyness or discomfort in certain situations are not necessarily signs of social anxiety. Comfort levels differ in varying situations, and some people are naturally reserved while others are more outgoing. In contrast to general everyday discomfort or shyness, social anxiety disorder includes fear, anxiety, and avoidance that interfere with daily routine, work, school, other activities. If you feel afraid of being judged by others, or feel super self-conscious in everyday social situations, you might actually be experiencing social anxiety disorder. To elaborate on that, social anxiety disorder, also called social phobia, is an intense, persistent fear of being watched and judged by others in certain or all social interactions. These situations can include meeting new people, dating, being on a job interview, answering questions in class, talking to a cashier in a store, doing everyday things like eating or drinking in front of others might also result in this sense of anxiety or fear. Generally, an individual with social anxiety is afraid that he or she will be humiliated, judged, and or rejected when in social situations, and that fear, anxiety, and stress can lead to avoidance that can disrupt day-to-day life. Usually, social anxiety begins in the early to mid-teens, but it can show up in childhood or later on in adulthood. Studies have actually shown that 7.1% of adults experienced social anxiety in the last year. Women seem to experience it a little more than men do. 8% of women reported experiencing social anxiety, while 6.1% of men reported experiencing it. Overall, though, 12.1% of people, of adults, are shown to experience social anxiety at some point in their life. Going a little deeper into social anxiety, the symptoms for social anxiety can be broken down into three components: physical, behavioral, and cognitive. So how people think. Physical symptoms can include things like racing heartbeat, increased breathing rate or difficulty breathing, dizziness, nausea or that feeling of butterflies in the stomach. It can also include shakiness, dizziness, difficulty swallowing or feeling like there is a lump in the throat, headaches, chills, sweating, blushing, tingling in the fingers, face, or toes. Those are some physical symptoms that might come up. Everyone's a little different. Behavioral symptoms can include things like turning down invitations to social gatherings. It can include arriving late and leaving early so that you don't have to get caught up in small talk. Avoiding interactions with unfamiliar people. Never volunteering to answer questions in class or in work meetings. Behavioral symptoms can also include avoiding eye contact or speaking really quietly during conversations, or drinking alcohol to help lower the anxiety before going on a date or going to a party. It also involves spending time after social interactions, trying to analyze your performance and looking at all of the flaws, the perceived flaws during the interactions. There are, of course, more behaviors, but those are some examples. Cognitions include skewed, irrational, unrealistic thoughts, like people should never look bored or look disappointed when I'm talking to them, or I'll make a fool of myself if I give this presentation. It can include thoughts that involve a lot of negative self-talk, so negative self-labeling, like people find me unattractive, boring, weird, awkward, incompetent. People can tell when I'm embarrassed and they think I'm weak because of it. If I show any form of anxiety, like shaking or sweating or blushing, it'll be disastrous within social situations. Cognitions can also include expecting the worst possible outcome when faced with a negative experience in a social situation. There are also anxious thoughts that build up when anticipating an upcoming feared activity or event, so that build up feeling, the waiting process, can be very anxiety-inducing to individuals with social anxiety disorder. Of course, as I mentioned, these lists are by no means all-inclusive, and other symptoms might come up for varying individuals. Everyone's a little different. Over the course of the pandemic, though, many with social anxiety have experienced their symptoms intensifying because there hasn't been as much chance to go out and practice social interactions and practice those social skills. So all of those negative thoughts and behaviors kind of dig in deep. There isn't really much of a chance to practice getting them out of the system. That said, while these symptoms can make daily tasks difficult, learning coping skills through psychotherapy or social anxiety support groups can really help with gaining confidence and improving ease with social interactions. Anita Avedian will be speaking on that, the treatment for social anxiety, a bit more.
Hi, I'm Anita Avedian, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I wanted to continue where Silva Depanian left off. She did share with you about social anxiety, symptoms you may experience, or those with social anxiety who do experience, whether it's the physical symptoms, emotional, behavioral, or cognitive. And I wanted to share with you about some strategies that you can implement if you relate to having social anxiety or you suffer around social situations. So I did want to first start off with that I am a therapist. I have been facilitating a social anxiety support group for over 14 years, on and off. So we would have a group that can last anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Most people would stick around for 6 months to 1 year. And I have seen wonderful progress that people made, where they would come to that initial session extremely fearful of a group setting, even sometimes fearful of walking to the building that people are going to watch them. And by the end of the groups, most of the time people have worked through some of their fear, if not most of their fear, but enough where they were able to get into social situations, maybe some light discomfort, but none that were debilitating where it prevented them from continuing to do that. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and what that means is we have a heavy focus on identifying what some of the core beliefs are. And typically it's going to be unhealthy beliefs. If we are suffering with social anxiety, then chances are I have a core belief that I'm not good enough, or I need to be perfect, otherwise people are going to judge me. These are examples of unhealthy beliefs that we carry around with us. And if those are some of my unhealthy beliefs, then the work we end up doing in therapy is we will challenge some of those unhealthy beliefs, test them to see where it really comes from and what the actual rational view of that would be. But the one that I can share with you that may work a little bit more quickly is what we call countering thoughts. And what that is if I have a certain thought that is irrational or negative, I have to learn how to challenge it, how to counter it. For example, if I think I'm going to be speaking to you guys and I'm going to mess up and everyone's going to judge me, if that's my thought, the countering is going to be, so what? Who cares? What if I mess up? Most people don't really judge when a person is messing up. Sometimes they may, but let's just say they do judge me. Then what, right? So chances are they're not going to notice, and even if they do notice, I'll be okay with it. I cannot satisfy everyone. And I say all this, but I also know that someone who suffers with social anxiety is also going to struggle with the thought that there's that 0.001% that may happen. So what this brings us to is, if something can happen, meaning if I mess up and you judge me for messing up in my speaking gig right now, then you will judge me, then you may not like me. I don't think I know who you are because this is going to be presented to people I don't know, or maybe I do know you, I don't know. But then what? So you may judge me, then what's going to happen with that information, right? Am I going to be laughed at? If this was in a room where I got to see people's reactions, maybe that's going to be a little bit different, where I may think, oh no, they're going to laugh, and then I'm really going to have a panic attack and humiliate myself and be embarrassed. So that being said, we want to act it out as if the laughter is going to occur, the judgment's going to occur, and learning to live and sit with that emotion, that distress, the feeling of embarrassment that I messed up and they noticed and now they're judging me. So the idea is not to run from it or avoid it or escape it, but to sit with it and learn to live with that. And eventually what you realize is you've spent months or years preventing from these situations from occurring, when really all it takes is a few minutes of embarrassment, which comes and goes, but you're not giving yourself that chance. So countering thoughts is going to be that, where I'm going to be judged, and the countering thought is going to be, even if I am judged, I can handle it. It's only momentary. It will pass. Okay, so if you want to learn more about countering thoughts, of course, reach out to one of us, Silva or myself, and we will help you through that process in a therapeutic setting. The second one is a little bit more fun. So part of our social anxiety support group, we have a lot of behavioral outings. And what that means is we go out there in the real world and offer some experiments, which is we want to have you predict what you think will happen. Right now we're during the pandemic, so we may not be actually following through everything we did in the past, but for example, if you walked around and you approached someone random and you said, hey, I'm giving out free hugs today, did you want a free hug? Chances are you're going to get rejected, especially right now during the pandemic, because everyone wants to keep their distance. And then it's about learning to sit with that rejection. So if I allowed myself to predict what may have happened if I experimented with offering a free hug, my prediction is I'm going to get rejected. How much do I believe that prediction to be accurate? Probably at 100%. Then I go out there and we do the behavioral exercise, and probably I go out and I offer a free hug to 5 people. Chances are 3 or 4 of those people may actually hug you back. And so you come back and you recognize that your prediction did not come true or as much as you thought it would, and or the prediction is they will reject me and I will not be able to handle it. And we all know that you will be able to handle it, but you're going to have a moment of embarrassment and discomfort. And again, the challenge and the idea, the goal here is to actually work and sit with that embarrassment in order to work through it. So I've covered countering thoughts. I've covered the behavioral experiments. There's two other semi-behavioral experiments per se. One, which I love, is what we call rejection therapy. So literally, if you create, you can do 30 rejection challenges in 30 days and really challenge yourself. If that feels extreme, maybe you do 3 challenges in 3 days and just try it out there, or 1 challenge in 1 day. But the idea is, the goal is to get rejected. So if you don't get rejected, you have to do this thing again. For example, you go to a restaurant and you ask them, do you have a free meal for me? Like, you go to Cheesecake Factory and you ask, can I please have a free cheesecake? Chances are they're going to reject you and say, no ma'am, sir, it's going to be, I don't know how much it is, but $8, let's say. So there's your rejection. Now you have to sit with that. If they give you the cheesecake, you're going to have to try something else. So the goal is to get rejected. If you're not rejected, you keep at it. There's one last option I wanted to address, and I can't tell you how well one can work through their fear around this, and that is joining a nonprofit such as Toastmasters. What you get to do there is join a club that's going to be very scary to do for someone with social anxiety. You literally announce that you have social anxiety or that you fear with public speaking. The club itself is designed to help people work through their discomfort with public speaking. And what that means is you would join a club, and typically people are very supportive in the club. And you don't really need to do a speech for some time, but it's better if you kind of get the ball rolling and plan on doing that earlier. And what you would do is be part of this Toastmasters club, pay attention to how others work through their own fears with public speaking, and take chances of responding to what we call table topics, which is the table topics master will ask a question, and then they call on someone to respond. So it helps you think on your feet, and you stand up and you respond for about a minute to a minute and a half, and your heart will be pounding. You'll be so nervous that you're not going to be able to say anything. Next thing you know, you realize you're able to come up with a response, pretty surprisingly. And then there's other aspects of Toastmasters, which is prepared speeches and evaluation. But eventually, with the small leadership roles you take on per meeting, you start pushing yourself through your comfort zone, and you recognize that you actually have what it takes to work through some of this. I like self-help books too, if that's going to feel helpful. If you're not ready to try anything behavioral, that's okay. I do suggest, again, try therapy. If not, pick up a self-help book. There's a wonderful program, in fact, that is called Social Anxiety Institute, and they do have some virtual groups as well. It's more peer facilitated, but sometimes that's helpful. So I hope this was helpful to you. So I'm just going to summarize what we discussed. Once you identify what some of your unhealthy beliefs are, then you can start challenging some of that. The second one is when you have socially anxious thoughts, to learn to counter those thoughts so that you feel better or not as uncomfortable. Third is create your own behavioral exercises and make sure you have the prediction outcome listed as well, so you can have evidence that whatever you predicted that was going to happen didn't really happen the way you thought. And in fact, most times it worked out much better. To try rejection therapy and or to join a support group such as social anxiety support group with Silva Depanian. And or lastly, if you feel up for it, joining a nonprofit club such as Toastmasters and working through your fear of public speaking skills. If you would like to reach out to Silva Depanian or myself, please do so. We would be happy to speak to you and guide you the proper direction. Thank you for now.